I'm with Louise Thompson from Musalaha, a reconciliation organization, and we're talking today about women. Now, Louise, you have special projects set up just for women. Can you tell me more about them?
Yeah, we do a lot of different things in Musalaha for women. And the reason that we especially focus on women is actually because about 5 years ago, the women came to us from the Israeli Society and Palestinian Society telling us that they didn't understand why they were being ignored as part of the solution to the conflict, and that they wanted to become actively involved in reconciliation and in peace building. And so they would like us to give them some of the tools so that they could go out and become active in their local community as change agents. And so what we decided to do was to start what we call reconciliation leadership training programs for small groups of 10 Israeli women and 10 Palestinian women in each group, where we go through what is the whole reconciliation process and what are the very sensitive and difficult issues that one needs to discuss going through the reconciliation process. And so they go through this training program, and then afterwards we help them to start implementing projects in their local communities.
Is the woman's voice very important in the home? You know that the men are very, very much strong here in the land, but is a woman's voice important?
The woman's voice is extremely important. And personally, I think it's one of the reasons why there's difficulty solving the conflict, that the woman's voice until now has basically been ignored and underestimated. We think that the women are very important because, as you said, they play an extremely important role in the family, especially in the cultures that we're in here, where the men are more in the public sphere, they are more in the political scene, but the women are then more the housewives who raise the children. And so they are the ones that decide what kind of values our youth are given. And therefore, they play an extremely important role, and we want to make sure that they raise their children with the right values, because the children are the next generation, and we want to see a new generation of leaders that believe in peace building and reconciliation.
Are women often victims of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict as well?
Yeah, we say and believe that women are actually biggest victims in the conflict because they don't have a lot of possibilities to act and react, or haven't had until we started helping them to give them a voice. And any person in a conflict can be part of the problem or part of the solution. And until now, women have kind of been made part of the problem because they haven't been helped to deal with the feelings and the actions and the reactions that they've had to the conflict. And so they've taken on this zero-sum victim mentality, which can be very damaging when you're trying to solve a conflict. And so we want to change that to make the women part of the solution in here.
The women find it very difficult because within a family they have to be the one that's strong for the husband, for the children, but then they're going through their own difficulties and issues themselves, so they take on perhaps more responsibility than they really should.
That is definitely an issue here. Plus, that they play an important role and they don't know how to play that role in the family. They don't know how to raise up their children. They don't know how to deal with the effects that the conflict is having on the children. Because if you think about it, the first Intifada was in the 80s, which was kind of in the latest round of the conflict. And so all the children in this country today are all children of conflict because they were all born since the first Intifada, and they've never had any time of peace. And they don't know what it means to live in peace. And conflict has great effects on people and especially on children. And so there are a lot of trauma symptoms that need to be dealt with, which are not dealt with because the parents are not equipped to do so. The women are not equipped to understand the symptoms and to deal with the symptoms of the struggles of their children. And so we really need to go in and try and help them do that.
Are there signs of trauma today in the children in the land?
Very much so. We see it at camp when we work with the children, because we start working with children from the age of 8. That's when we're allowed to work with children here, but we know that from the age of 5, a person starts developing stereotypes. And so we want to go in already at 8 and try and make sure they develop positive stereotypes of other people. And so that's why it's also important for us to work together with the women, because it's one thing if we go in and work with the children and then at home they learn something else. So we want a cooperation on that level.
Now, how can women change society in a male-dominated area?
Well, I don't think that only women need to change the society. What we need to teach the society is for men and women to work together. And so what we do when we give the women the skills, but we also work with the men to show them how it's beneficial to let the women be part of the change, and that they have good skills that the men can use when they're trying to implement change on any level in community. But at the same time, we also teach the women how to work together with the men, not isolated only as women, because that would just create another problem.
Now, when you bring Israeli and Palestinian women together, is there a difference between the two?
Yes, there is, because you're talking about 2 different nation groups, 2 different ethnic groups, and 2 different cultures. 2 groups that have a very different history. Even though they live side by side, they have different language. They have different ways of expressing themselves. And I think it's also one of the problems that they don't realize how much culture actually has an effect on their communication. And so sometimes some of the misunderstandings that they have when they do try to communicate or try to get along and try to get to know each other are cultural misunderstandings. And so we try to show them that and teach them also cross-cultural communication.
Do Palestinians and Arab Israelis feel more like second-class citizens in this land?
From what I have heard, yes. And I think in many ways, rightly so, there are differences between the rights of Israelis, Jews, and Israeli Palestinians. And we want to talk about that together with the Israeli Jews. And it's one of the things that the women discuss when they come together. How is society functioning, and how is each group playing a role in their society, and also the identity of the groups. But also we want to make sure that no one falls into the victim role, which is so extremely important, that the Palestinians don't think, okay, we're always the victims and we're only the victims, and we need to wait for others to improve our situation.
How easy is it to bring women together to discuss the situation?
It was easier a few years ago than it is today, because the whole situation has shortened a lot. People have become a lot more right-winged on both sides. And I think it's a result of actually, in some ways, losing hope in the situation. You see them kind of like swinging from one side to the other, that a few years ago people were moving left and electing more left-wing politicians, and that didn't work. Then they went back to the right, and now they've elected very right-wing politicians. But also, I think, just feeling a bit hopeless about having a political solution to the problem. At the same time, though, that kind of brings them to us on a more grassroots level, because I think more and more people are realizing that the solution is probably going to come from the grassroots level and not from the political level. Of course, one day the political level has to also have an influence, and if you're going to have an agreement, it's going to come on a political level. But people are realizing that it's not helpful to just sit around and wait for politicians to make the change, but that each person can do something to make a change. And even if you can't change the whole country, at least you can change and improve your own life and the life of the people around you by just dealing with some of the anger and hatred and bitterness that many people feel and have felt for generations, and which is very destructive to a person's own life. And, yeah.
Are people tired of the conflict today?
Yes, I think any people is tired of any conflict, and no one wants to see conflict. And I do believe that everybody here wants to see peace. The problem, of course, is that each person defines peace in a different way. Because peace has become a very broad slogan, and in many ways it doesn't have a lot of meaning anymore because it's been very misused. But I think everybody wants to just live a peaceful and good everyday life and want to have the opportunity to decide for himself what his life is going to be like, not have the surroundings decide for him what his life is going to be.
Now, do you bring understanding between religious groups as well as ethnical groups?
Yeah, we work in Musalaha a lot between, right now, the Christians and the Muslims. We believe that we have to work with all the groups in society because at the end of the day, the whole society has to get along for the conflict to end. And so we've decided, okay, we're going to start working first between Christians and Muslims, because the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is very complicated because it actually consists of a lot of different conflicts. It's not just a conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. There's conflict within Israel between Israeli Jews and Israeli Palestinians, between the secular Jews and the religious Jews, between secular Jews and Messianic Jews. Then there's conflict in the Palestinian society between Christians and between Muslims, and within the Christian community between the different churches. And you have to go in and deal with all the different conflicts in order to be able to deal with the overall Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And so we've decided we're going to go in and deal right now with the Christian-Muslim conflict.
Is it easy to bring Muslims and Christians together? Do they listen to each other?
It was easier than we thought it would be, because they came to us and said, we really want to improve the situation in our local community, and we want to see more cooperation between the two groups in the community. And so they came to Musalaha and asked if we could help. What was, I think, for me at least, very surprising was that it was much harder to bring the Christians to the process than it was the Muslims. Because Christians have a lot more negative stereotypes about the Muslims than Muslims do about Christians. So, yeah.
Is there a lot of misunderstanding between the two religions?
I think there's a lot of ignorance among the two groups about the other religion. And so what people do is they listen to the media, and the media only deals with the extremists of both groups and not really with the religion itself. And so people, they have this wrong picture of what Islam is and what Christianity is, and a very extremist picture of it, which is not really what the majority of each group believes in, and not the way that they live their lives.
Now, you also do community development programs. What do you do there?
Yeah, we do with the women community development. And right now we're working mostly in the Bethlehem area, where our women do projects for Christian and Muslim women together, which is part of our effort to improve the relations between Christians and Muslims in that area. And at the same time, also helping these women to acquire some of the necessary skills and knowledge in order to become agents of change in their community, and in order to prepare them to meet with Israeli women to engage in the reconciliation process.
And what's your prayer for the work that you do here, for the women and for the two different groups coming together and having peace?
I have many prayers. Of course, I pray one day to see peace in the country. I pray to see two people who are able to live the way that people should be able to live, with the freedoms and rights that come with it. I pray for the women that they will really have the courage to use the skills that we're giving them to really go out and believe in themselves that they are very potential agents of change. I pray that the men will work together with them, and that together the whole community can try and work towards changing things for the better, but in a way that they define as better, not in a way that people outside define. Because it's easy for all of us to decide what would be good for the Palestinians or what would be good for the Israelis. But I would like to see the Israelis being able to build the kind of society that they would like, and the Palestinians being able to build the kind of society that they would like, so that they both feel that they live with the freedoms and the rights that they dream of.
And you have a website for people who'd like to know more. What's that?
Yeah, please go in and visit our website, which is musalaha.org, where we try as much as we can always to update with the latest information of the different projects that we have going on, and also prayer requests for upcoming projects. And because we run into a lot of difficulties, it's very hard to arrange all these different activities that we do. There are so many obstacles in this conflict. First of all, the governments here don't really want to see us meet, which means that we can't actually meet here in the country. We have to go abroad to meet, because it's illegal for Israelis to go into Palestine, and it's illegal for Palestinians to go into Israel. And so it's only when organizations such as Musalaha actually arrange meetings abroad that people can actually meet. But also there, it's a struggle, because it means a lot of travel. It means a lot of applying for visas to other countries, which is not always so easy, because not all countries are open to receive Palestinians especially. And so there's a lot of things that we need prayer for, just to keep going on a daily basis.
Okay, Louise. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.